everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, November 23rd of 2025. This has been another very good, interesting week for me, as I am sure it has been for you too. And it just has felt to me like this whole year has been a huge year of fast changes, energy shifts, frequencies, life changes, planetary changes, collective changes, government changes, politics. It's kind of like, wow. And then what I wrote the very first part of this week in my journal was this: 2025 has been no joke. And I wrote that and I just let it sit there for a minute, because it feels like every single week it's not just one thing that happens, it's big things that happen, and there's big decisions that have to be made, and we have to grow super quick. Even if we've been on a growth path our whole life, everything is exponentially changing. So, and you know, this has been the story of my life, most of my life, but of this year. I knew going into 2025 that this was going to be a massive year of change, and I don't think I realized how fast it was going to happen for me. And I know this is happening for a lot of people, because I have to actually, this has been a huge week of connection for me and talking to people, and little nuggets of things have come in that are actually really big things. So 2025 has been no joke. So then I wrote this: it's been full of fast moving energies and changes. I've constantly had to ground myself and remind myself that the frequency of love always wins. It feels like the actions I take and have taken this year are critically important. It feels like to me, if I see things that are happening in the world, and I am at this point so tuned into my intuition that I know how to act on it, and I feel like every single day sometimes I'm being asked to tune in to that highest intuitive piece of myself and make a decision in the moment. And I don't know if you can relate to that, but it feels like this is what we've been prepping for, not just our entire lives, but maybe multiple lives. Maybe this has felt like the year of massive prep, of these decisions that need to be made individually, so it can affect the collective, right? So it feels like the actions I take and have taken this year are critically important. And I just kind of sat with that for a second, because I'm like, I've just thought about all the things that have happened this year. And even if I say what's been happening in the last month and a half, it feels like if I don't make these decisions and I don't make the correct decision, which I feel like it's all been correct for me, because it is correct for us and it's individual. Every decision we have to make affects us individually, even though it affects our community as well, and the people we interact with, and our jobs, and our children, and our whatever it is it might be, right? It feels like the decisions we're making not only affect us critically individually, but it does affect the collective. If you can relate to that, I'm sure that's probably resonating. So it feels like the actions I take and have taken this year are critically important to what happens in the years that follow. That's kind of the first thing I wrote. And then I wrote this: I think that's why it's so necessary for me to do the really hard stuff. The window has been wide open. I feel like that has been the message for me this year, that the window for critical changes that need to be made, the hard stuff, the easy stuff, any of the stuff, that the window has been wide open. And then this flowed in, and it feels like it's actually closing. Okay, now I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a most positive way, because when the window opens for massive change in your life individually, in your community, in your job, in your family, and as a collective, which I believe is happening on a not just collective but mass scale, and not just in one sector of our lives, but in all the sectors of our life. Like, that's how it's felt to me. It's felt like if I don't make these changes while the window is wide open, the changes, a lot of them have been changes that I've needed to make And it might, for some of you, well, I think for most people, these things are going to be different. Maybe you need to make a massive change in your health. Maybe you needed to make a massive change in your job. Maybe you need to make a massive change in your relationships. All of these things that have maybe been just kind of tapping at us for years, decades, many times, maybe even just a few years, maybe even just a few months, maybe it could just be a short period of time. But to me, this feels like 2025, in the middle of this decade, since 2020 until we hit 2030, has just felt like the pivotal year for massive change. And it feels like this window is closing. So as I sat with that for a minute, I think this is human for us to say and get in the thought of dystopia. What is it's like our brains in survival mode think, what's the worst that's going to happen, because I need to prepare. And I have pushed that away, and I have pushed that away constantly, strategically, not just this year, but most of my life I pushed that away. But this is really dialed in because it feels so critically important. So I pushed that away, and what I decided to journal on for the rest of this week was, what is the best that can happen? So with these decisions that I've been personally making that affect me in all of these categories, because it kind of reminds me a little bit of, think about what's happening in the world of money and economics and just currency. Okay, you look at world currency, you look at the currency just in the United States, you look at what happened in the crash of 2008, and you look at how it affected banking and the housing market. And I don't say all this to paint a doomsday picture, but my brain, the way that I work, the way that my brain just works, these are the things that I've always paid attention to, because I don't know, they just, first of all, they interest me because this is the part of the safety and security, right? It's like, okay, if I don't pay attention to what's happening, it's going to affect me in this way if I don't make the right decision. And so it's been really interesting to me because, in 2008, right as the big crash happened, I think 2009, 2010 was really pivotal, because that's when the market in housing and banking, well, the banking, we all know, got bailed out, but then the housing market, people's lives, the destruction economically that happened during that time, there was a window when, if there was preparation from prior, then you were able to take advantage of that. So, we sold our home and we built a brand new home in 2010. We've sold our home in 2009, and we built a brand new home when it was the best time to build a home, because the home builders, the prices were good, the interest rates were good, everything. So, and I only tell you this just for context. So from what I see happening, it's easy for me to paint a worst case scenario, because I believe what's happening economically with currencies and with the inflated craziness that's happening, I don't think we've ever seen before, at least on this level. And we can see it because we have access to information, we have access to technology, we have access to different people's opinions. But if you look at the pure law of math and physics and economics, what is happening right now is absolutely unsustainable. There's nothing that can prop it up. So again, I only say this for context because it's easy to just dive into the doom and gloom, and you look at all the other things, like what they're pushing on us, like digital IDs and CBDCs, and you kind of go, whoa. So what I wanted to do this week for my own self-preservation was to say, with all of these decisions I've been making and the way that I've been utilizing the energies of 2025 so strategically, what is the best that can happen? Okay, so that's where I wanted to take this, because I felt like, okay, I really feel like the best case scenario is possible. Not just possible, it's inevitable. So this is what I want to share with you today, is some really, really interesting thoughts that I had, and I actually came up, I journaled out seven different things, okay? So the very first thing I thought is, in a best case scenario, because of all the things that are happening, all the things that have been exposed, The very first thing I believe will happen is that collectively we will snap out of our trance. Okay, that's what I wrote. Okay, I think we're gonna be so sick of being lied to, tracked, doped up, and divided. I think we're gonna get so sick of being divided and doped up and lied to and tracked and all of that stuff. I think we're gonna get so sick of that I think that the majority of us, we're gonna simply stop consenting to it. We're just gonna say, nope, I'm gonna opt out, okay? I don't think that we're gonna do it with like the so-called pitchforks. I think we're gonna be way too tired for that. You know, I spoke about this last week and just kind of, in a way, the sheer exhaustion of the fight, right? So I think what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have a stubborn refusal. We're just gonna say no. And me being a very grounded, absolute, stubborn Taurus, when I set my mind to something, there's nothing you can do or say or bribe me with that will change my mind. Nothing. It's really that simple for me. And you might relate to that. You might not relate. You might not relate to any of this. I think that what we're going to start doing is we're going to start doing these things. We're going to start growing our food. We're going to start, and I think we already are. We're going to start bartering. Okay, that would seem old-fashioned, but I believe it's going to be like, all right, you have this and I grow this, let's swap. You know, the neighbors on my street already do this, and we've been doing this for years because that's what neighbors do. Oh, I had a ton of tomatoes, you want a bag of tomatoes? That's bartering. And then they might say, oh, you know what, my peach tree, can I bring you a bag of peaches? This is already this has been happening for millennia, but I think that is going to heighten up more than it's already happening. I think more and more people are going to do what many people did because of the lockdowns in 2020. Many people are going to continue to opt out of the school system, and they're going to start homeschooling. And of course, there's all of the things that come with that. You know, I have a couple of nieces and nephews who have been homeschooling since even before that, and the benefits are so beautiful. So I think many people are already moving to smaller towns. I know that's not possible for everyone. I totally know that. And then I think we're going to start deleting a lot of the apps on our phone. You know, I've never done banking or email on my phone. I've never, ever done that. And in 2020, I deleted my social media apps. I deleted Facebook off of my phone. There's things that we are going to start deleting. I've never had a fitness app on my phone. I've never tracked my heart rate on my phone. That's never been with me, but I cleaned up the apps on my phone. And I'm really careful about what apps I allow on my phone. And then do I allow them to track my information? You know, you can learn how to go into the settings and do that. And I'm sure most of you, if you're watching this, you probably already have done that. I think we're going to start not just bartering, but we're going to start using cash more. And I've reached a point where I won't frequent a place that doesn't take cash. And I know that can be very inconvenient for people. I went into a restaurant, a very casual restaurant this week with a friend, and it's a restaurant I've frequented over the years many, many, many times, and it's a local chain here in Salt Lake, and they had just recently stopped using cash. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And so I kind of raised a stink with the checker, and then I said, I know it's not your fault, but I said it's illegal for you not to take cash. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. And I feel like it's really, really important that we frequent places that continue to take cash, because cash to me equals freedom. Cash to me equals the ability to not have our currency cut off. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to start, this is what I would really encourage people to do. In fact, what I've been doing for years is I do cash only Fridays, because I use my credit card to get gas. I use my credit card in Costco. You know, I use my credit card, but I believe that we need to keep cash moving. And I believe this is something that more and more and more of us need to not only do, but we need to let the people that we frequent their businesses know that that is an important piece. You know, and it's interesting because when I actually expressed that to the cashier, a young girl, she said, you're not the first. She said, we have a whole lot of people who are complaining about that. And that made me really happy. That made me really glad. I think we're going to keep using privacy tools on our apps. And I really believe that we're going to keep building parallel systems. And this is the whole thing I talk about. Walking on a different timeline is simply just choosing different systems, and or creating different systems. Just create something parallel, because we're all walking on this together, right? But some people are choosing to walk this way and some people are choosing to walk this way. But I do believe there's going to be a collective snap out of a trance. There's still a trance. There's a trance happening, like a zombification of humanity as we walk around with our face glued to our phones. In fact, it still stuns me whenever I pull up to a stoplight and I watch people walk across the street, a busy street, maybe a street with 2 or 3, 4 lanes on each side, and there's people walking across the street, not even looking at the car, they're just staring at their phone. I just am like, granted, it's mostly young people, even though a lot of young people are starting to realize that staring at their phone is not a very cool place to live, right? So I think it's already starting, this, from what I can see, it's happening already. It's already happening in smaller pockets, small pockets. I think those pockets are growing. So I believe that that is the number one thing that is going to start to be really, really apparent, is that collectively in larger groups, more and more people, and I believe this is happening, but I believe in 2026, as this year closes out and the massive changes that are happening, and just from my perspective in my own life and the things that I see, and I see this window, for me the window feels like it's getting narrow to actually make these big hard changes, okay? Now the second thing that I really see, and this is why I brought up the whole thing about the economics and the crash of the banking and the housing in 2008, is that I think that what I wrote is that there's this control grid of debt. We are a debt-driven system. We almost don't have the ability, especially younger people, to get out of debt. The massive inflation of what a home costs and what land costs, and then we've got the taxes, and it's absolutely unsustainable the way things are. So then I wrote this, because I think we are in not just a housing and banking bubble. I believe we're in an everything bubble. And because this interests me, not from a doomsday perspective at all, but from simply an awareness and a preparedness perspective, I think this is an everything bubble. Because, well, here's what I wrote. I think it's finally going to pop, and it's going to pop hard. And I think it's going to pop hard enough, this is my own opinion, but I think it's going to pop hard enough based on the pure fact of math and physics. It's just not sustainable, because I just don't think that the central banks can paper it anymore. They can't lay the paper over it, because the paper is worth it nothing. And again, this is not doomsday. So this is from a best case scenario perspective. Okay, so let me finish where I go with this. So I think what will happen, because we see it as humanity and we don't want the alternative, is that we're not gonna accept the CBDCs, okay? Because we're gonna have other options. We're gonna barter. We might have to grow our own food for a while to sustain ourselves and help out our neighbors and our family, okay? And if we're prepared, we don't have to be scared, right? And and I think that this is what will happen, okay? And this is how I wrote this. I think the system will reset, okay? But only in a way that it's going to wipe out all of what I feel like are these parasitic entities. These entities are parasites off of humanity, off of our ability to create stability and abundance. And I think that this is going to happen. This is going to happen in a collective renaissance, enough of a percentage that it's going to wipe out these parasitic entities. That is what I believe will happen, okay? So I think what will eventually happen, and again, I am painting this with a rosy but realistic scenario. Okay, I think that ordinary people, young people especially, are going to be able to own their own house and their own land again, because what I think will happen is that the prices of everything is going to crash back to a level of sanity. Where we are right now, you think about just pure survival mode to put food on the table for so many people. That is not sanity. So when things are going to have to reset just because they have to, not because for me, let's reframe a perspective of a global reset into a perspective of a reset back to sanity. Okay, that's what this feels like to me. Okay, is absolutely possible. And so let's see. So then number 3, and this is really cool. This is a really cool way to look at things. I think that the energy. So think about the things that we need to survive as humans. We need warmth. Sometimes we need cool. We need shelter, and we need food. Okay, so what I wrote here is that I think what's going to happen with energy and food is we're going to flip from scarcity into abundance, because we all know that there is abundance for everyone. No one has to be cold, and no one has to be hungry. And now the system is set up for this to happen. It's set up for us to be in this constant loop of struggling to eat and struggling to. It's a constant struggle, and it's been like this forever. So and I watched my dad do this, but there's a lot of suppressed energy, and we know if you've been down any information rabbit holes or trails of watching the things that were suppressed. In fact, I remember as a teenager, my dad talking to someone and bringing, he would bring these really interesting people into the house, not just health people, naturopaths and iridologists and reflexologists and chiropractors, and they were all interesting with interesting stories. But he actually got involved with a couple of people who had alternative energy, alternative to gas and petroleum. And I remember them talking about this kind of a fuel and this kind, water and corn based. And I really didn't pay that much attention to the details of it all, but I do remember it quite clearly, because this was a huge part of my dad's life. And, it left a massive impact on me and my siblings. Okay. So I think that there's going to be, these things are already rumbling out there. All the things that have been suppressed and kept from us. And what I wrote here is there's going to be a mix of fusion, next generation solar, geothermal, and even some of the forbidden stuff that people used to talk about. And, you go down the conspiracy rabbit holes on that, and you hear, this person invented this type of clean, free energy, and then he died in a crazy car accident, or he was found dead from a heart attack. You hear this. And if you've gone down those rabbit holes over the years like I have, this is a constant theme. It's constant. So all of these things that have been forbidden or hidden from us, I believe that they're going to come out and resurface, and there's going to be too much of it for it to be suppressed. That is my opinion. Okay. So the suppressed energy gets forced into the open. I think it's going to get forced out, because it's just, you can't keep filling air into a bubble without it popping. It's going to eventually just come out, because there's too much minutia. There's too much energy behind it, right? So it's going to, the system is too broke. The system is too broke to keep suppressing it. That's basically the bottom line. So then all the other things, all the other, small farms and energy efficient technologies, and that's all going to come. So that, to me, I feel like that is going to start really, really showing its beautiful head coming. It's already coming. It's already happening, but it's going to start exploding in the next couple of years. I think it's inevitable. Like the financial bubble of everything that feels it's inevitable, it's going to reset into something more sane. It feels like this is inevitable for humanity to flow into a place of abundant energy and protection and food. That this is inevitable, and this is not just from my perspective, a rosy, hopeful future. To me, this is inevitable, because there's way too much information out about this is how it's supposed to be for us on planet Earth, right? Now, the number 4 thing that I wrote here was this is really dear to my heart, and I actually thought that I was going to stop at this, because this I could talk about and journal on for a really long time. And this is that medicine goes back to its roots, but we keep all the good stuff. We keep the good stuff with modern technology. We keep the trauma care. We keep the testing. And I even think that there's a place for genetic testing that we can, until we get to a point where we realize that we are not controlled by our genes. We are controlled by our belief systems and our mindset and our ability to heal, not just because we are designed as a wellness machine, as a wellness organism, whatever you want to call it, but we can connect to the divine that has the healing power and all of the quantum entanglement with all of that. We that is, so we do need the good technology that keeps us safe when we are in a car accident, that helps keep us alive. I've said this many times. 3 years ago I had a full knee replacement because I had a horrible water ski accident, and I have this beautiful new knee that now I can do everything. I can hike, I can bike, I don't run anymore, but I can walk 5 miles every day. Like, it doesn't bother me at all, and I have so much gratitude for what this is. Okay, so medicine goes back to its roots fully, but we keep all the good stuff. Okay, so what I think is going to happen, and I think it's already happening, and I'm sure you can feel this, is that the pharmaceutical, I don't even think they're an industry. They are like a cartel. They're going to lose their stranglehold on us. It never had a hold on me, and I don't say that to brag. I say that because that is just true, and I know many of you can relate to that, and I know many people can relate to that because they've started to opt out of it, and they realize that they don't need it. Now, this is part of keeping the good stuff. There are good things that can keep us functioning and alive, when we might be still working on things that are going to take us where we don't have to depend on that so heavily. But I think it's going to lose its stranglehold, and I think it's going to happen much quicker than we realize, right? I think we're going to start demanding, what I wrote here is real transparency, and I think we're going to get it because we're starting to demand it. So this is where we, again, they don't want us to know that there's so much beautiful brightness in the future. They want us to, they want us to think that this is the way it is, this is the way it's always been, we don't have any choice in the matter, we don't have our option, we're a victim to our genetics, all of that, okay? So we are going to start realizing from the people that we trust in our medical system, they're going to start realizing and helping us realize what actually heals us. So here's what I wrote, this list of things: herbs, fasting, of course I wrote herbs first, fasting, sunlight, grounding, saunas, clean water, minerals, and then I even wrote here at the end, even psychedelics. Okay, I think they're already kind of becoming a little bit more mainstream. A lot of people they have the desire to have that, their rise in consciousness, their healing from trauma. I think that many people are realizing that these are some of the tools that have been put on this planet to help us achieve that. Okay. So, and then here's what I wrote. I think that we want a long lifespan. So I think that what's going to happen through all of this is the result is going to be 120 years is going to be a normal, healthy lifespan. And I don't think it's going to be the last couple of decades, or the last decade, or even a few years of poor health attached to a feeding tube or oxygen tank, or just on a string of pharmaceuticals. I think it's going to be vibrant health until our biology is ready to lay down and go to sleep, and that's it, right? That's what I really believe. Okay, so what I wrote here is that I believe the result will be 100 to 120 years of a very vigorous life. For those who want it. I think you have to want it because you have to take action. You have to take steps. You have to take steps to make that happen. You can't just go, yeah, that sounds great, and you have to take steps. You have to do the stuff, right? Okay, so number 5. I thought actually that I would end right there, but then I thought, okay, well, what about this? Because this feels so critically important. We're going to remember how to be humans together with all of the division that is just thrown into us and encouraged into us. Oh, you differ on that, I can't spend Thanksgiving with you. Look at what happened last year. That was the massive thing with politics. Is I remember people encouraging, if your family voted this way, cut them off, take them out of your life. That's not human. That's not being human, right? So I think we're going to remember, we're going to start remembering on a more massive collective scale, because that's already happening. but we're going to remember how to be human together. Together, even if we have differences in opinions and the way we live our life, the way we choose our religious beliefs, the way we choose the person we want to represent us, or whatever that may be. And of course, there's things that need to change in some of these arenas, right? So here's what I wrote. I believe that many people are going to be less lonely because we are so sucked into our screens and our technologies, and it not only gives us a dopamine hit, it gives us a sense of belonging, and it distracts us, and it sucks us into after that video ends or that reel ends, their next one's right there. The next one's right there to feed the algorithm of what we're interested in. And to step out of that and realize that's a lonely place to be is a very, very, I think that the loneliness is going to collapse. I really believe that because it's already starting to happen. And sometimes people are going to have to be brave it's almost like thinking about someone that's been in a dark cave and against their will, right? So think about that. Someone's in a dark cave, they see a light and they walk toward it, and they come out and the bright light kind of hurts their eyes, and it's kind of like waking up out of the loneliness and walking out of a cave into a light room, a light sunshine out into the outdoors, and it's kind of like that. Oh, it's so nice to sit with my family and have dinner every night together. You know, I will say my son and his wife and their 2 children, I lucky I get to go over to their house for dinner sometimes, and this is their family. This is what they do. They sit, they have dinner together. There's no devices there. The kids are 12 and 14, my beautiful grandchildren, and it's amazing because they literally talk about their day. And it's interesting to watch, the kids get so validated by all the things that happened in their day and what they felt and what happened with this friend and that teacher and the feedback and even the teasing between the siblings, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to watch, okay? And this is, to me, coming back. So I think families, our tribes, our villages, I think that there's going to be just more connection in person with people, because this is already happening, and for many of us that never stopped. I never stopped meeting people in person, even when they told us we couldn't. Right? We need to remember that there were other people telling us we couldn't see our family members. We need to remember that. Okay, and I think many of us have. So what I see happening is the internet and AI is here, that this will stay. Okay, so I wrote the internet and the AI stays. It's here because there is good to it. There's connectivity, there's access to information, there's different perspectives and opinions. This is where our discernment comes in, but this is all really critically important. But what happens is it becomes more like a tool. Instead of substituting the connectivity with other humans, it's just a tool. It's a tool to help. It's a tool for us. And I know that many people already recognize that, and that's how they're utilizing it, right? I think what happens is this: people are going to start grounding more, and this is something I encourage people: go stand in the grass. We're going to start touching the grass and touching the trees, and we're going to, we have a nice big yard, and for a long time I wanted to get rid of the grass in our front yard, just because I wanted to maybe plant stuff there. But I will tell you, we got rid of all the grass in our backyard. But the grass in our front yard, we're lucky because we have a very big front yard. It's got, there's a deck and there's a fire pit and there's a grill, and I live at the end of a dead end, so it's a beautiful neighborhood that I am so blessed to live in. But the kids, when all the kids come over and all the cousins come over, because everyone knows, if you've been watching me for a while, I have a big family, lots of kids, and them frolicking and playing and rolling around in the grass and chasing each other, and it's so amazing. And I go stand in the grass on a regular basis. That's where I ground. And it's even sometimes, I was out grounding this morning and it was cold. There's no frost yet, but I bundled up, but I went out with bare feet and I stood in the grass for a while. And what I like to do is watch the sun come up over the mountains here. And my front yard, when I walk out my front door, I face it faces the east where the sun rises. And the mountain, there's a huge Wasatch Mountain range, and I get to watch the sun come up, stand, and there's a really important piece of our circadian rhythm that gets that as well when we watch the sunlight come up. It's important for our hormones. It's important for so many things as human beings and connected to Mother Earth, right? So we're going to touch the grass, we're going to touch each other, and I mean that in the most beautiful, loving, pure way. The human touch, the physical touch that we get with each other, in just pure, genuine, I love you, is so, so important. Okay? I think we're going to start laughing around fireplaces and fire pits and bonfires. You know, some of the best memories I've had just growing up, we used to go up into the mountains where we lived, and we would build a bonfire, and we'd sometimes bring these little the dinners, hobo dinners we'd call them, you know, stuff, vegetables and hamburger or a little piece of meat wrapped up in these tinfoil, and we'd throw them in the fire, and those were our so we would sit around the fire and we'd poke fire, you know, sticks in the fire, and, you know, laugh and get dirty, and this was just a beautiful memory. And, you know, this is something that we've done, you know, on purpose, a fire pit in our yard, so that we can actually do this and commune around a fire pit and tell stories and joke with each other, okay? And then I wrote this because what this does, this helps us we can provide music, we can dance, we can pray, and we can laugh together. This is all about remembering how to be human together. Okay, I love this. This to me is what all these hard things and all these big changes, this is what this is bringing back to us. This is a gift. This is part of what is the best that can happen. Now, the sixth thing I wrote, this just feels like, okay, yes, of course. Because part of the reset that I think is important to happen in a really positive way, and this to me is like all of the they, the them, the elites, whatever. What I wrote here is they lose their entire plot. This has been, you know, a plot, okay? So it's going to fail for them, not because there's going to be like I think, you know, people with their pitchforks in the streets, like some big heroic effort, okay? Because it for some reason it feels like these really big massive changes that happen when good things happen, it happens kind of quietly, and just resisting, just from saying no, right? It's because what I think is going to happen, people are going to simply walk away. And we're going to start doing and building things that are more fun. This stuff that it's not fun. The stuff that they have trapped us in is not fun anymore. And we can individually walk away from it. It can be that simple, okay? And then what I actually wrote here, which is just me doodling in my journal, is they can have their insect burgers and 15-minute cities. You know, it's funny because the place where I have my business warehouse is in a suburb here in Salt Lake called Draper, and across the street, when I bought this warehouse, it's been about 7.5 years now. This is where the Utah State Prison was. It was directly across the street from my business warehouse that I purchased. Now, about 3 or 4 years after I bought it, the old prison got torn down, and this was in the works. And I knew this when I bought this piece of property for my warehouse. I knew that, and the local news. So the prison moved. It moved to way out past where the Salt Lake Airport is, and it's out in kind of by where the salt flats are in the Salt Lake. But this is a big 640-acre piece of property that the Utah State Prison lived on. And there's been all this talk and all this, isn't it so exciting that we're building a 15-minute city here in this this very valuable piece of property, real estate. And it's like, to me, you can have your 15-minute cities and your insect hamburgers or your burgers, your insect food. Like, we're going to simply walk away from this, okay? So that was number 6 of the 7. So the last thing that I okay, let's put a super positive spin on this. And for me, what I believe is flowing in through us through all these changes is beauty. Beauty and love. Beauty wins. Period. Beauty wins, okay? So I think that what I think is really important is that architecture is going to go back to things that are beautiful, because you look at some of these cities, and there's some buildings in downtown Salt Lake that are so matrixy. In fact, our federal courthouse that sits in the downtown Salt Lake City, it's a rectangle block. It's a block of steel that it doesn't even look like it has windows. It does, but the windows are, it is the most matrixy building. Of course, it's a courthouse, right? But I think that architecture is going to come back to where it's beautiful, because humans know how to create beautiful things, right? I think that a lot of kids are going to start learning things that are creative and more craft-like, carpentry and metalwork and saddle, leather work and making saddles, and I know that sounds really simplistic and maybe old-timey, but that's just kind of an idea of all the things and there's going to be creativity in technology as well. Even with AI, there can be creativity. So it covers the whole gamut of us being creative and learning more than just these things that are so weirdly matrixy, right? So let's see, what else did I write here? Okay, so I wrote a few things. I kind of doodled all over these pages, but here's what I wrote. This is the place where I allow myself to hold when I'm feeling what I think is the most lucid optimism. Because I really flow into these places that, it's been such a roller coaster, but I flow into these places that I almost can't contain the energetic bubble that flows off of me. It's not even a bubble. It's just so, because I feel so much lucid optimism. And I don't know if you can relate to that. And of course, even within the next hour, I could go, something will happen. I'll open up an email, whatever will happen, and it will almost plummet me immediately. So luckily, I realize what it is, and I understand that this is, okay, wait, what is this really? And why did I let that dip me so quickly? And then I can pull myself out of that quite quickly too, okay? So for me, this is this. No one has to agree with me. That's why no one has to agree with me. There's not going to be a perfect solution politically, economically, for everyone. We all are different. We're living different experiences. We have different perceptions, and we have different issues that we're each dealing with, okay? So, and this is where the whole thought of love wins and the rise of just pure consciousness and love always wins. It always does, always. Okay, what it requires of each of us to get quiet and just choose something different. We just have to choose something different. While all this old stuff is burning itself out, we just need to choose something different. It doesn't have to be that dramatic or that hard. And if you think about where you sit right now, like where are you sitting right now? Well, maybe you're sitting somewhere right now where it's really beautiful. And I know I've had many people tell me, oh, when I listen to you, I turn on my teapot and I sit with a cup of tea, and this is my little routine on Sunday. And if you really think about, take a minute. Am I sitting in a warm kitchen? Am I sitting on a beautiful patio? Am I laying in bed watching this, or whatever your situation may be? Be in a surrounding, if you really look at where you are, and then let gratitude flow over you for that, right? So then of course I had to do this, because I'm like, oh, these are 7 really great things. So I thought, all right, I wrote some questions down for myself that I'm going to journal on this week, and I might even just journal on them later today. But I thought, I need some journaling questions for these things, because I feel like if I can journal on these things and solidify them into my beautiful thought process for the changes that have been happening so quickly for us as humanity, and flow them into the action steps that I can take as we move through the rest of the very short period of time we have in 2025, and let it flow into 2026. So the first thing is is that we will collectively snap out of this trance. Okay? So here's a couple questions. What am I still pretending I have to do that I could actually stop tomorrow without the world ending? Okay? And then this, if no one ever praised or punished me again, if no one ever praised you again or punished you again, okay? How much of my current life would I immediately burn to the ground? If you never got another accolade, a pat on the back, you think about all the things that people do for a living, and this is something that really can trigger our ego, because a lot of our lives are built on they're very ego based. They're built on how much more money can I earn? What kind of promotion did I get? Even a plaque or an acknowledgement from, and I'm not saying those things are bad, but the question to ask yourself is, what if that went away? If no one ever praised and then the other spectrum punished me again, okay? How much of my current life would I immediately burn to the ground? This is actually a big idea and factor in my nephew Ben's latest book, which is a scaling book, How to Scale Your Company. Because a lot of what's going to get you to where you want to go are the things that you have to let go of and that you have to burn to the ground. You have to just release. You have to let go of them because they don't serve you. It doesn't serve you to depend on, I got to be the best. I got to be the best person in my company so I can get that plaque. Maybe the plaque doesn't really mean anything unless you put the meaning on it. And again, this is not judgment on whatever your path is doing. This is just simply just a suggestion, because before I restarted my dad's company, I was working for a big fitness center chain, and I was managing a club here in Salt Lake, a big fitness center, and they used to give us plaques as general managers. It was a big company. There were 200, I think there were more than that, clubs scattered around mostly in the West. But we would get plaques if we would earn a certain amount of money or sign up a certain number of new memberships. There reached a point, and this has now been more than 25 years since I left that company. After I left that company, I had a shelf full of plaques and then crystal acknowledgments, and I was actually really good at what I did because I believed in it so strongly. But I literally threw them all in the trash. There was a point where I threw them all away. And this was more than 25 years ago. So, and I'm not suggesting you do that, but that's what I needed to move on from that particular job that I did. And there's a whole interesting story behind all of the nuances behind that. But that was just something that I just did. I realized that was not what made me me. It was quite fascinating. Okay, now the second set of questions is based on the debt-based control grid cracks. So we think about this debt-based society that we have caught ourselves in, okay? Here's the questions. How much of my identity is secretly tied to money or status that I don't even enjoy having? Do you really, you hear this thing about, for me, money is an energy exchange. That's what that is. There's an energy exchange in money, okay? Money is something that is a tool. It's a tool to get us, to walk us through the world the way that we have it, right? But at a certain point, how much money do we need? And are you tied to getting more stuff and consumerism and materialism? Okay, right? And then the status thing. I don't care about fancy things. And like I said, I don't judge anyone who loves fancy jewelry or fancy cars. I don't really, if that what brings you so much ultimate joy in this life, as long as you do not tie everything to it, where this is what makes me me, is all this stuff that I have and the status that I feel I have. We are in a finite experience. The status that you enjoy in this lifetime, when you cross over, is going to mean exactly this much. Zero. So how much of my identity is secretly tied to money or status that I don't even enjoy having? That's a really powerful question, in my opinion. And then this, if all my digital wealth vanished overnight. Okay, so we think about the stuff that we look at as digital wealth. are followers on Facebook or Instagram. Maybe you have that's how you make your money, is you have a digital platform, right? Maybe you've invested in digital currency, cryptocurrency. Think about that. So if all of my digital wealth vanished overnight and I kept only what I could carry or what people would freely give me, who would still show up at my door and that would be enough? And would that be enough? Would that be enough for you? The people that show up for you, not based on what you have, would that be enough? That's a powerful question. Okay, now the third thing is about energy and food, and the obvious fact that we know that there's abundance for everyone. Okay, so when energy and food flips from scarcity to abundance, when was the last time I produced something with my own hands that I could literally keep someone alive? And why is that so rare? And I wrote that question because I feel so grateful and so blessed that the things that I get to create and put into this world helps other human beings. This is something that, especially these last, I think I formulated my first formulation 22 years ago. And I cannot tell you the humbleness that gives me, that I get to create things that improve someone's life. So let me read that question again. When was the last time I produced something with my own hands that could literally keep someone alive? And why is that so rare? It needs to be not rare. It needs to be something, and it might not be something that saves someone's life. Then maybe that's a little dramatic for me to phrase that question. But phrase it in a place where something maybe that enhances someone's life or brings value, right? Or happiness or joy or whatever that may be. So then the second question, if food and energy became virtually free tomorrow, what excuse would I no longer have for staying small? Because think about that. Look at what we do for pure survival. In fact, I think about what made me think about this question was that movie called In Time. And you might remember this movie. It's a movie where it has Justin Timberlake in it. And it's an older movie. I don't know, it might be 15, 20 years old, maybe older, I'm not sure. But people, they keep on their wrist is a little time clock on their wrist. And the clock actually starts when they turn 25. And if you've never seen this movie, it's actually quite a fascinating. I've watched it several times. I found it quite enjoyable because there's so many metaphors in it. But basically, you go to work and they don't give you money. You put your arm up and it adds life to the number on your wrist. And if you don't keep earning money or exchanging something with someone, and people can steal other people, it's a fascinating movie. Okay, so there's only an exchange of time, and you exchange some of what's on your life for food. Like it's such a fascinating movie. So if food and energy became virtually free tomorrow, now that's kind of dramatic on the other side, but what excuse would I no longer have for staying small? So if you didn't have to just work at a job you hate or do something you dislike or something you went to school for and now you feel like you don't have a choice because you have to pay your mortgage and put food on the table and put gas in your car, if all of that went away and you could live in a place of security and safety and nourishment, what would you stop doing? Or what would you stop playing small at? I mean, that is a complicated question, maybe more so than I thought. Okay, so then this one, if medicine goes back to its roots and we keep all the good stuff. Okay, so here's two questions. What part of my daily suffering am I medicating instead of actually facing and healing? Okay. Okay, and the second part, am I willing to feel everything my body is trying to tell me, even if it means dismantling the story that I am fine? This is so common in our human culture in this modern world, especially in the Western world. I'm fine. It's very rare that I find myself, I don't really say that word anymore. I'm very thoughtful when someone asks me how I am. And I do my best not to have it negative, especially if something hard is happening. I'm in the middle of something that's a challenge, especially with all of these changes and all the stuff I talked about at the beginning of this. I really do my best to be authentic, but not be depressing if something hard is happening, right? Okay, so then this, we remember how to be human together. So here's some questions about that. Who in my life right now truly knows me? And whose fault is it that number is so low? Okay, because the reason I wrote this is because right now, my circle of friendship and my circle of close connected people is starting to expand a tiny bit, but it got almost completely demolished because of 2020 and all the big shifts that happened. It got my circle, but in a way that was very important. I needed all of the energies that that were kept in my life. I needed to release them. Okay. So who in my life right now truly knows me, and whose fault is it that number is so low? This I wrote because I have been constantly pulled to start doing more things. Like I feel like I need to go join a place where they offer yoga. And I love yoga, but I move my body differently, and to me yoga is very hard to do by myself, as far as I just don't have, that's not just a normal part of my practice. And I enjoy having a teacher guide me through a yoga class, and it's been a long time since I've done that. So that question came in because I think I'm really being pulled to go do that. I'm really being pulled to go do that because I know that there's going to be places that I go and participate in these things, because I'm going to meet, there are people that I'm supposed to meet and bring into my circle. Okay? And then this question: when was the last time I let someone see me fully cry, or dance, or I'm so lucky I got to teach group exercise for 40 years. And of course, this was in an environment that I controlled. I had the music, the playlist I wanted. I had all my choreography. I had my microphone. I had my great outfit, which changed over the years as, different styles came in and out. And I have kind of been a self-conscious dancer, like when you go to a wedding and they dance, unless the dance floor is super crowded, where then you just kind of blend in and you really just can kind of move however you want. But we need to just let ourselves be human, and I think this happens for many people when we get older. You just, no one cares what you look like when you're dancing or you're doing your ugly cry, right? If you have to cry sometimes, when I went to dinner with my friend this week, we talked about how sometimes just watching a little reel or a touching commercial or something, which, the commercial thing is, I don't really watch commercials, but then that actually can make us cry. And it's okay. It's good to cry. Okay, so then a couple questions about the elite people. What if they lose? They're losing their plot. Okay, so here's a couple questions. Deep down, do I secretly want to be one of the elite? Okay, this is a really good question to ask yourself, because I know there are many people and who want the status, and who want the fancy yacht, and who want the private plane, and you really need to think about that. I would love one day to have one trip. It's kind of like a bucket list thing for me. I would love a flight on a private jet. I just think that sounds amazing, because the way airports are, for me, I love to fly, but I don't love to fly the way things are set up right now, with the security and the pat downs, and because now I have a metal in my knee, I have to always be patted down. I don't like that. And all the BS that we go through to fly. And I'm old enough to remember way before TSA, when flying somewhere was a lot more joyful. So I do have this thing where I would love to experience, what it feels like to go get on a plane that's a private jet without all the BS. So here's what I wrote. Deep down, do I secretly want to be one of the elite? Or am I just terrified of being left behind when this elite system collapses? Because it's on its way out, guys. It truly is. And then this, if the people currently running the world became irrelevant tomorrow, would I feel liberated or exposed? You know, that was just something that felt important to put into this. And as soon as I did that whole section and wrote these questions, then I thought, okay, wait, let's go back to beauty and love. Let's end this with beauty. Like beauty wins. Okay, so then here are the questions about beauty. What part of my life is so ugly that I hide it even from myself? Okay, this is a very deep personal question, and might be a little hard to wrap your head around journaling on, but it might be a very important one to do that. And then this, if I had 1 year left and 0 consequences, what outrageous act of beauty would I finally dare to create or become? This is the perfect place to end this, because you really have to think about that. This is finite. Our experience here is finite. If you had 1 year left and 0 consequences, so I'm not talking about doing something bad or hurtful or anything. That's why I framed it like this. If I had 1 year left and 0 consequences, what outrageous act of beauty would I finally dare to create or become? This is it. This is the crux of it all. Many of us are unwilling to do something brave, beautiful, creative, and bold until the right moment, until this happens, until this system falls, or I get this job, or I have this, or this clears up, or let's take that off the table. Let's be in the moment and act as if that is already here. Because honestly, that is how we shift it. That is how we change it. Each of us individually does something outrageously bold and beautiful. That is how it happens, because when you do that, the consciousness level rises. It's unbelievable. And this is one of the reasons that I paint. And I have created some, if I may just say so myself, some beautiful paintings lately. Really, really, really beautiful. And what I do is I write messages underneath the canvas. Before I've been doing these great big canvases, and I take a black Sharpie and I write beautiful things. I write, almost everyone is different. And then I paint over them. And then a lot of them end up in people's homes. A lot of them end up in my own home. And I can feel that those messages radiate through because there is the quantum entanglement. So anyway, I hope this kind of came together with some coherence of what my brain thought of this week in the whole idea of what is the best that can happen. Because as we wind up the energies of 2025, I will tell you, I feel moments, roller coaster moments for sure. But I feel deep, deep gratitude for my awareness and my ability to see the good in things and the pure beauty that lives in this lifetime that we all get to experience together. So thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. Oh my goodness, it's been an hour. Wow. Okay, if you got to the end of this, kudos to you. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful week. This is Thanksgiving week. And this is a time that even if your Thanksgiving is small, maybe if it's a little bit lonely, maybe it's something that's small and quiet on purpose, because that's what resonates. Remember to stay in a place of just pure gratitude, and gratitude for this life, for this experience, for what we get to do and be together. So thanks so much for tuning in today, guys, and we will see you next time.